This month we have been looking at the theme of living out loud, a different way of looking at LOL, not laugh out loud, but living out loud. We have looked at the idea of saying yes to life, being about clearly setting intentions for what we want to bring in, and maybe a little bit less about what we want to let go of, more about what we want to bring in. We took a look at how important it is for us to express the light that we are in our own unique ways, wherever we are and whatever it is that we are doing. And then last week we explored how important it is to deal with doubt, how doubt kind of pulls us down, and yet there is that in us, and Theos, God, the divine, that lifts us up, and that there are things that we can do in practice to help us to rise above doubt. And I think finishing this series with the idea of enthusiasm is important for us, to be able to feel that experience of being filled with God, and let that be what motivates us to bring about change personally and to bring about change collectively. So there was a farmer who had a female pig, and this farmer decided that he wanted to raise pigs. And so he only had the female pig, but he knew of a farmer down the road that had a male pig. So he arranged to bring his female pig down to the other farmer's house to breed with the male pig. And so he made arrangements for that, and he asked the other farmer, well, how will I know if this has taken? And the farmer said to him, well, you'll know because next morning when you look out, if your female pig is walking around in circles, it means that it has taken hold. But if she continues to wallow in the mud, like pigs usually do, well, then it didn't take hold. So next morning arises, and he looks out the window, and darn it, the pig is wallowing in the mud, so he knows that it didn't take. So he makes arrangements to go back to the other farmer and try the breeding process all over again. And so he did, and he brings his female pig back and waits until the next morning and looks out the window, and gosh darn it, she is still wallowing in the mud. She is not circling around that pen at all. So he figures, all right, third time is a charm. I'm going to take her one more time, loads her up in the truck, takes her to the other farmer. The two pigs do their thing. He comes back with his pig, spends the night just praying, hoping that in the morning it's going to have taken. And in the morning, he's so nervous. He doesn't want to look out the window. He asks his wife to look out the window for him. And she looks out. He says, well, what's the news? Is she walking around in circles, or is she wallowing in the mud? No, she's not walking around in circles, and no, she's not wallowing in the mud. Well, what is she doing? She's in the truck honking the horn. I would say that's enthusiasm. I would say you didn't expect me to tell a joke like that, did you? Enthusiasm. She knew what she wanted. To know what we want, and to not give up when we don't see it manifested. And whether that's a significant change in our own lives, or whether it also includes looking out at the world and being perhaps worried or discouraged or angry or confused, and never losing sight, never losing hope of what is possible, and always doing the very best that we can with enthusiasm, with the Spirit of God within us, to take the steps that we can take to bring about some positive change. So how do we do that, and what is that all about? Well, enthusiasm, as I said, comes from the Greek word entheos, meaning to be filled with God. And the truth of the matter is we're all filled with God equally. We're all made in the image and after the likeness of God. The difference is what in us is a barrier to that expressing. Is it our own doubt? Is it our own fear? Is it our own insecurity? Is it the fact that maybe nobody ever told us how absolutely amazing we are at the very core of our being? In fact, maybe we've been told exactly the opposite and we've bought into that lie that somehow there's something wrong with us, we're bad or we're flawed or we're born in original sin, which is just not true. We are absolutely born in original blessing. And so it's not that God is not in us, or spirit or the divine, whatever it is, term we're most comfortable using. It's that we need to be the best vehicle we can be to letting that out, I was so tickled this morning when I read at home today's daily word and the quote from Charles Fillmore that was in it, because literally as I'm looking at my notes, which I put together more than 6 months ago, I have but a mistake. I thought he said this when he was 86. Daily Word says it was 94. Charles Fillmore, at 94 years old, I fairly sizzle with joy and enthusiasm to spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me today. That's inspiring, isn't it? How many of you that have a few more candles on your birthday cake, like me, maybe have found in the last decade or so that you don't quite spring forth in the first hours of the morning with the same energy that you did when you were in your 20s. Anybody else like that? A few of you, right? The body still works, but maybe it's not quite exactly the way it was a few decades ago. 94 years old. 94 years old, our co-founder, I fairly sizzle. That's a powerful word right there, right? It's a very visual word. I fairly sizzle with joy and enthusiasm to spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. I'll never forget my minister, Reverend Robert Stevens, from many years ago, saying to us, his congregation, when you wake up in the morning, do you say, "Good morning, God"? Or do you say, "Good God morning"? Isn't that good? Is it good morning, God, or good God morning? Ernest Holmes, in The Power of an Idea, wrote this. Ernest was the founder of religious science. He wrote, enthusiasm is a joyful trust in life, a happy outlook, a complete assurance and confidence that there is a power within us greater than we are that we may use. Complete assurance and confidence that there is a power within us, and theos, God, that there is a power within us greater than we are and that we may use. It should be our purpose to awaken this joy in us again and again and enter into the game of living, not sitting on the sidelines as though we were isolated, but on the field ourselves. It is God's enthusiasm and becomes ours on acceptance. Enthusiasm isn't about suddenly becoming a cheerleader. There are those whose personalities tend to be much more like that, much, more expressive, much more outgoing, and their whole energy might look like that of a cheerleader, and that's great. We need them, but we also need those of us who maybe aren't wired quite that way to be our own version of enthusiasm. It's not so much about faking a certain kind of energy. True enthusiasm is often more about curiosity and engagement. Think about that for a moment. I want to unpack it for us. It's more about curiosity and engagement, and less about turning up the volume, more about curiosity and engagement. So I want to share 5 little ideas with you on what that looks like. And the first is this active practice of curiosity. Say the word curiosity with me. Curiosity. It is my belief that we all, every one of us, comes into this world with a very natural state of curiosity. We do, because we're wired in a way that we're trying to understand this environment that we're living in. And so we're curious about it. Some of you know that John and Jennifer and I have recently gotten some puppies. And they're not quite a year old, but I watch the puppies, and even they are curious with new sounds, new people, new experiences, curious. Why? Because everything for them is still fresh and new, and their curiosity at the other end of being curious is the experience of learning, the experience of discovery. And so this practice, this active practice of curiosity helps to feed our enthusiasm. Enthusiasm often dies when we feel like we've seen it all. Take that in for a moment. Enthusiasm often dies when we feel like we've seen it all. But if we approach situations more with a curious attitude, with the attitude of, what might I discover here? What might I see that I never saw before? What might I hear that I never heard before? What might I discover that I never knew before? All of that helps to keep that spirit of enthusiasm alive in us. So the practice of active curiosity. The second has to do with the language we use, the words that we use. In our tradition of New Thought, it is our belief that our words are really important. The words that we speak out loud, as well as the words that we say silently to ourselves, that our words are powerful, our words direct energy, our words can be constructive or destructive. And so to help with keeping our own enthusiasm brighter and more alive, we can make a conscious choice to use higher energy language. Like Charles Fillmore used, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm to spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me today. He didn't say, I get up in the morning, get out of bed, and go about and do what I need to do today. Doesn't have the same feeling, does it? Doesn't have the same feeling at all. When we say things like, in response to how you're doing, fine. How's life going? Okay. What if we challenged ourselves to develop a more vibrant vocabulary? There's a member of our church, he's not here today, he spends a lot of his time cruising the world. That was a dream of his to do after retirement, and Glenn Thompson, you made that happen. But you ask Glenn how he's doing, and he will say, fantastic. And he means it. Or if he doesn't quite mean it, he knows he's going to grow into it in the next few moments. Does that make sense? To just challenge ourselves with the language that we use, how energy infused, how descriptive are the words that we use, because they do matter. They do matter. Using slightly more vibrant language tricks our physiology into feeling more aligned with that emotion. There's some science behind that. It's not just woo-woo metaphysics. There's actually some science behind that. Instead of just being in a drained mental state, we up-level our state with the words that we say. A third has to do with focusing on the why, the contribution we're making with whatever task we're doing. It's hard to be enthusiastic about a task, but it's easier to be enthusiastic about the outcome. Think about that for a moment. You're going to laugh, but I was in my shower the other morning with my clothes on, with a broom in hand, trying to clean the grout in my tiles in my shower. Any of you ever had to do that work? It was not a task that I was saying, oh, I am so excited to be doing this. Not at all. It was just one of those things. We all have them, right? Things you just do because they need to be done. But as I'm scrubbing and brushing, I'm remembering this lesson. I'm going, oh, I am enthusiastic when I think about the outcome. That what I want is a sparkling shower. So I don't have to be focusing on the task. I have to do the task, but my energy goes to what? The result, the outcome. It's a way that we fire up our own enthusiasm. I think too often we're looking for someone or something outside of ourselves to do this for us. And the truth of the matter is, the work is ours to do. It's an inside job. It's our work to do. So focusing on the why, instead of just the thing you have to do, what's the outcome? What's the good that's going to come about as a result of you doing that particular thing? It's a way to keep your own enthusiasm up and alive. And I think we need that in our world today. Those of us who care about our world need to be making sure that we are keeping our own flame of enthusiasm high and bright to do whatever is ours to do, however we are meant to do it. A fourth has to do with something we've talked about or we talk about in metaphysics, and it's the idea of physically acting as if. You've heard that before, right? Physically acting as if. It's a way that we can play tricks, if you will, on our mind, positive tricks on our mind. To act as if we're already feeling the thing we want to feel more naturally and automatically. In the work that's been done at the Institute of Heart Math around the coherence of the heart and the energy of the heart, one of the things that they have measured now for decades is how embodying certain qualities, certain states of being, another way of saying acting as if, can absolutely change what is happening in the rhythm and the coherence of the heart. Their work focuses in the area primarily of meditative kinds of practices. I don't know that they actually use words like acting as if, but when they are teaching people to put themselves in a heart space of coherence, where the heart is beating more in sync and rhythmically between each beat, they encourage people to practice holding a particular positive feeling. And in their research for many, many years now, they have found that the one feeling to hold that more quickly and solidly puts the average person's heart in the state of coherence is the practice of the feeling of appreciation or gratitude. They use those words interchangeably. And that when people in meditation act as if they are embodying that feeling, that there is a physiological change, a positive physiological change. And then their research goes further to point to when the heart is in a state of coherence, it is much easier for us to access the wisdom of our heart, to access that divine, bless you, that divine intelligence, and again, that divine intelligence in the heart. So this physically acting as if is a very simple and very effective practice. We can act as if with the words that we use. We can act as if by holding, practicing, embodying a particular feeling. We can act as if just physically, the way we carry ourselves. Are we carrying ourselves in an erect way? Do we sit up? Do we have good posture? Not because mom told us we need to sit up and have good posture, but because we are acting as if and embodying a certain state of being, a certain quality. In my notes, in some of the little research I was doing, was told that this is known as facial feedback hypothesis. That, for example, when we choose to be the one that greets the other with a smile, that we are changing our own physiology in the process of doing that. Does that make sense? Of course it does. Of course it does. And then the fifth and the last idea that I think is important in us nurturing and kindling the fire of our own enthusiasm is to never lose sight of what it is we are trying to accomplish. To never lose sight of it. It's why in our metaphysical practice we do things like vision boards, or we do our white stones and write words on our stone to help us keep in mind what it is that we want to accomplish, that we hold it as steady as we possibly can, knowing that we're not going to go in a straight line from where we are to the accomplishment of that thing, that there are going to be detours, and that the pace is going to change. Sometimes we'll be making more rapid pace toward accomplishing whatever our vision is, whatever our goal is. And sometimes we might just need to sit down for a while and rest. And sometimes we might feel discouraged, and sometimes other things might happen that seem to take us off track or put us on a detour path for a while. And yet, we continue to hold that vision for ourselves. One of the most vivid examples or stories of this is one maybe you've heard before, maybe not. It's happened in 1952. Some of you weren't around then, but in 1952. How many of you recognize the name Florence Chadwick? Just some of you, okay. So Florence Chadwick was one of the first women to swim the English Channel. Now just stop and think about that for a moment. That's a pretty long distance, and that's pretty cold water. But she was one of the first, if not the first, to successfully swim the English Channel. She had as a goal then to become the first woman to swim from Catalina Island to our California coast. And she attempted this on the 4th of July in 1952. Any of you ever taken that ferry or that boat from Catalina to the coast? That puts it in perspective. So here's this lone woman who's going to swim from Catalina to the California coast, 4th of July, and still the waters were cold and it was very, very, very foggy. And she's swimming with her trainer and her mother in like a guide boat near her, with rifles shooting at the sharks that are in the water kind of around her. And hour after hour, she is swimming nonstop with thick fog, very, 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 very cold. Millions of people, it was televised, millions of people watching her as she's trying to make this attempt. And she becomes exhausted. And she begs to be pulled into the boat and to stop. And her mom and her coach, her trainer, keep trying to encourage her. It's not that much further. You can do it, but she cannot see the shore. And she begs to be taken out of the water, and she is. Less than half a mile from the shore, less than half a mile. She was interviewed shortly after that, and she said, in essence, I'm not making an excuse for myself, but had I been able to see the shore, I would not have given up. 2 months later, she did the same thing, but it didn't end the same way. The cold was just as severe. The fog was just as heavy. It was the same guide boat, mom and the trainer and the rifles and the sharks and the fog and not being able to see it. But she saw it in her mind. The only difference was she saw it in her mind and never stopped seeing it. And she successfully swam from Catalina to the California coast. Such a powerful example, I think, for all of us to recognize just how important keeping that alive for ourselves is. And whether we're looking at our own life individually, whatever might be up for us, maybe we're facing financial challenges in our life right now, or we may be trying to find work, or trying to deal with family dynamics that are difficult right now. Whatever it is that we're going through, it's not that we deny the reality of what's happening around us. We don't sweep it under the carpet, but we make sure that we are as crystal clear as we possibly can be of what it is that we are wanting to bring into manifestation. And we don't let the fog, and we don't let the doubt, and we don't let the fear win and take that vision away from us. And the same is true for us as we hold a vision of a world that is more loving and peaceful and kind and just for everyone. And even though we may be far away from that right now, let us keep in mind and do what we can, the vision of what's possible, because there are still far more good people in the world doing good things in the world that we probably don't hear enough about. And we need to stand firm in that and be enthusiastic with that, for that, and about that. Namaste.